It's the Growler with BD and J, here to analyze for you today. From Growler Bet to Jay's got stats, we hope you enjoyed this episode of the Growler Podcast.
All right. Welcome to the latest edition of PD&J on the Growler. Paul Dehner Jr. here with pinch hitter extraordinaire Charlie Goldsmith here with us. What's up, Charlie?
Paul, how you doing?
I'm doing great. You've been a legendary pinch hitter on the PD&J show, of course, while also holding up on the walkout, rewatch. I mean, it's been great to be able to do so many different shows with you.
Hopefully I get one of those exclusive rights free agent tenders at the end of this Growler season.
It's under consideration. It's under consideration right now. We'll see if you had a Mitch Tinsley. I would say you've had more than a Mitch Tinsley impact amongst the exclusive
Maybe
rights.
I'm more of a futures contract guy.
No, I don't think so. I don't want you on my practice squad at all. But I certainly appreciate all the stuff you've done. This is annually a huge show. And it's that again today. We're going to go through all of the news that is happening from locker cleanout yesterday, which was a really busy one. And of course, we had the statement, the showing of support for Zach Taylor and Duke Tobin that came from Mike Brown. The fallout from that, Duke Tobin is going to speak at the podium in Cincinnati with us on Friday at 1:00. So we will discuss that. Mo Egger is going to join for us to kind of get into the Zach Taylor, Duke Tobin thing. We'll have our Camargo Insurance run, passer boot, Growler bet results, ARBIES, all the things that we do here. But there's just a lot. There's a lot to unpack. I try to keep this show limited every year. Like, I'm not going to go too far this year. And every year I'm like, did we do 2 hours? Just looking down, like, how did that happen? When there's so much that comes out of the end of the season as we get things going in the offseason, it's hard to keep it to a smaller number. But, Charlie, I know you're up for it. And we will not do 2 hours. I vow to that. I've failed in that before, but I vow today it will not be that bad.
All I have is a flight to Arizona on February 7th. So as long as we're done by then, I'm good.
Yeah, well, we'll try. I make no guarantees because there is a lot to get to. Before we get to that, though, I do want to say, Charlie has been an unbelievable pinch hitter. We are still always thinking about our guy, Jay. And I want to say how much we certainly appreciate how much you guys are still thinking about our guy, Jay. And so many of you have reached out. How can I help? I just want to show some version of support. Can I say how many ARBIES gift cards can I get delivered, right? Like, it's just everybody wants to help. And so we just want to give you an outlet to that. So we have started a GoFundMe. If you just want to give some support at all to Jay as he goes through his time after losing his wife, Nikki, please go to that. It's in the show notes. It's at the growerpodcast.com website link. You can go there. Anything you want to give certainly helps and can go to any number of things that come up, as anybody can imagine, in this truly horrific, tragic time that he's going through. I appreciate so many people that have come up to me at the live shows, sent us emails, texted, how can we help? We're just going to set this up right now as a way because there's so much going on. Go here. Anything you can do, certainly, I know will be appreciated. Really, we will. So head on that, growerpodcast.com, or in the show notes. You can find that link. We hope we can do that. All right, let's get into the show. So we've got a lot to get to here. And of note, the place I want to start is just, we'll get to Tobin talking and Zach Taylor and all of that with Mo in a little bit. Let's just go into this open locker room yesterday, and I'll open it up. There's a bunch of different directions you can go. I'll just freeform it to you here, Charlie. What was your biggest takeaway from all the conversations and things seen, heard, and observed in the locker room yesterday?
We had some fantastic conversations, a lot of really interesting guys to talk to, a lot of nuggets and information that shows about the past and the future. However, my biggest takeaway was usually there's kind of more, not in terms of the information we get, but obviously it's Trey, but Trey's not around. Who's the big free agent this year? Who's the guy that's like, man, you're losing that guy? Like, I remember having this like not emotional on my end, but emotional conversation with Jesse Bates about, man, what a run it's been, with Mike Hilton last year, guys like that. The fact that there's not one of those guys hitting free agency this year, this emotional heartbeat pulse, and also a great player, to me, that shows a lot kind of about why the Bengals are in this spot in the first place. They just don't have those guys. They're that young. They're that, many rookie contracts. There were that many veteran contracts that didn't pan out. That wasn't my conversation with Geno Stone. And I'll get into what Geno told me later. But just overall, it feels like maybe the weakest free agent class they've had in a while exiting. And that is a reflection of how not enough talent there was on the roster.
Agreed. You go down the list and you're like, okay, who's the guy here that is getting the most push? Got to have him back. Dalton Reisner, right? I mean,
yep.
Somebody who showed up right before the season started and, was a joiner into the starting lineup halfway through, really, in terms of becoming a solid piece. That's the one that you have Ted Karras and Amari Mims standing up and saying, let's do it. And Dalton saying how much he wants to be back and wants to get it settled in before March even gets here. And you're hearing a lot of that push. And then it's kind of crickets outside of that. Like that's really who, Flacco, I guess, partially, but that's sort of its own weird thing. Like, you're right. That's the guy that most people are looking at. Like, yeah, you would feel like you kind of screwed up if that guy wasn't back. But outside of that, Cam Taylor-Britt, Joseph Osai, Geno Stone, maybe even a Tyson Anderson, depending on how you view that, right? Like you're going down the line pretty quickly there before you find someone where you're like, oh man, you don't really see a lot of guys that they're pining to bring back.
And that's what the roster construction was. With how little they did in free agency, you feel that on days like the final day or the day after the postmortem day of the season, when you look around and it's like, here's your team. There's no one who is the equivalent of some of the huge, massive tentpole free agents that they've had exiting the locker room in some previous seasons.
Yeah. So my favorite conversation was with Cam Taylor-Britt.
Yes.
We were talking about this afterwards. Like, you could write a book on this guy, like as a player, as a person, as a way an organization handles somebody who could be a guy, to just, the way that personality impacts football. He is a fascinating test case. He came in and he's on the scooter. His foot's in a boot. He's hoping to be, he thinks he'll be healthy by training camp and everything. 3 to 4 months probably left in his rehab, I think he said. But he's a free agent that a couple of years ago, you'd have been like, man, Cam Taylor-Britt, that the time is going to come. He's about to make the money. He's got so much money at stake. He had as much money on the line as anybody the last couple of years. And instead, we're talking about, man, they've got to get extensions done for Dax Hill and DJ Turner. And Cam Taylor-Britt feels like he's wheeling off into the sunset a little bit. And I don't know what will happen in terms of how the league will view him, in terms of if there's maybe is a role for him in Cincinnati. He said he's absolutely open to a change of scenery, as you might imagine, but he does love it here and will be comfortable playing wherever anybody wants him to play. He's like, I'm going to go call my agent and talk to him after this. I have no idea what to expect or how this goes or anything. The fact that we're saying this with this amount of total uncertainty is really a crazy spot to have landed at with CTB.
I mean, he's the big what if. I don't think there's a player who's been in so many different buckets as Cam Taylor-Britt. He was a rookie on a team with a championship caliber defense. He became actually cornerback 1 on a team with the championship caliber defense. With the way he emerged in the playoffs, Eli Apple was corner 2 on that team. He was the star and the face of what you thought the next version of the Bengals defense was going to be when he had that pick against the Chiefs in week 2 of 2024. Here it comes, the changing of the guard. It'll become Cam's defense. He'll be the next Pro Bowler in this group. And, then he also had runs as a backup, as a healthy scratch, as a guy who just couldn't figure it out, as a guy who lost or who showed that he was losing confidence. And, 4 years of covering Cam, specifically kind of the decline, he never really opened up. Like, he was always trying to, during the decline phase, not in terms of athletically or anything. I always felt like he was a bit impacted by kind of the way he kind of ruffled some feathers with some comments when his stock was at its highest. Like, we all remember him calling the Commanders a college offense. There were a couple other examples, I think, like that. He ruffled some feathers. Since then, he never really said much, and he went from one of the best talkers on the team to one of the quietest. But you kind of saw kind of your true Cam yesterday, I thought, when we spoke to him. By far the most reflective I feel like he's ever been on what the heck happened.
Yeah, and I think he dealt with the mental strain of having to be that guy, and then, having his relationship with Lou Anarumo was problematic. Like, it just became that for whatever reason. And then there was this fresh start with Al Golden that you felt like, okay, maybe he's going to have that. And it just didn't obviously take. A lot of the same problems they felt like they were seeing before happened. And then right before he got hurt, it was like, oh, now it feels like you're on another one of the upswings with Cam. It was just, there was such a roller coaster every single year that it was really, you just couldn't rely on him. And it's just one of those positions, and not that there are some that aren't like this, but specifically over there, you just need something that is stable, that is reliable. And you feel like you know what you're getting every day, every week, every year. And, he had the ability to bring, his nickname was literally Juice. Like, he had ability to bring the energy a defense needs, and he provided that when he was playing well. It was just the fact that you never quite knew what you were getting year to year.
Snap to snap.
Yeah, snap to snap ended up being why it just wasn't someone that any coach could bet on.
He becomes, again, like a big what if for this era of Bengals football, for a Bengals team that's defense what it was what it was in 2024. Like, if Cam had that Pro Bowl season, they make the playoffs. Cam probably gets an extension. And now he's off and running. Now Dax Hill's in the slot. Now, you have one of your highest paid corners already. Now you're probably not paying 3 corners, Dax, DJ, and Cam. If Cam's a star, does DJ Turner even get an opportunity on the outside in 2025? Like, there are all these what ifs that all go back to Cam, because that's the gravity he had as a cornerstone of this organization. Like, this too should be Cam's offseason, getting paid. The message to him entering the year was, go make $40 to $60 million. Go do it. You're that good. I also want to give him credit, because post the healthy scratch, like, he did show improvements. There was good hustle. There was good effort. There was some solid consistency, not quite playmaking, but he was fine. And I think that should help him as he enters free agency now. Like, a team can take a chance on him and put him into an outside corner battle in specific schemes, but he's going to have to prove it, and for a lot less than he would have gotten had he put it all together.
Yeah, he does. He feels like, prove it's the right word. He feels like 1 year, prove it in a battle guy somewhere that's worth taking a chance on. And I'm not going to totally rule out it being in Cincinnati, because they do have to figure out what their depth is going to be there. But certainly feels like somebody else would be willing to maybe bring him in, thinking he could be a fit. Let's talk about Joseph Ossai real quick. Maybe one of the bigger names in terms of what people will make non-Hendrickson division among the free agents here. He'll probably be the highest paid. What do you think his market is?
I'm not a Joseph Ossai guy. I'm still spooked by the wrist injury. I would want to make, like, what would my market be? I would want to make it a 1 for 12, 2 for 20 type situation. But because of his youth, because of his traits, and because, around the league, and the Bengals are about to face this problem themselves, you're always in a situation where you need to talk yourselves in to free agents, or else they probably wouldn't be free agents. I bet he probably ends up getting, 3 for 40, 4 for 36, something like that. I bet there's a team willing to go much further than I'd be willing to, based on kind of what we know and what we've seen here in Cincinnati.
Yeah. I don't feel like they have a fit for him. Like I think they have a bunch of guys, like they have a bunch of twos. Like I think with Shamar and Murphy, and like I'm sure they'll add another guy in there, whether it's a different mid-tier free agent or another draft pick. Like they need a one. They need a star. And so to me, money allocated probably doesn't fit with him as much as it would someone else. I don't feel like in this room. And so I don't know that I see it happening here. I don't get the sense that there's a Joseph Osai push. Now we say this free agency is weird, man. Like I wouldn't have thought
see Jermaine Pratt.
See Jermaine Pratt. Like there's every year, BJ Hill, Jermaine Pratt. There's some of these guys, Drake or Patrick back in the day. Like there's guys where you're like, oh man, I'm really surprised they brought him back. But you go to the market kind of falls the way it does, and then there's your guy looking you in the face. And next thing you know, they're back. So I wouldn't rule it out. Because we don't know what that market is totally going to look like, but it doesn't feel like what he'll probably get and what the Bengals are probably going to want to pay him and where his role, where it matches up in the puzzle of this defense. None of those pieces feel like they match up for me as we sit here on January 6th.
Now, with that being said, like they like Joseph, and it's not a guy who it's like this gotta go. No, it was workable. He's a useful piece. I actually think defensive end is their biggest need out of the whole roster this offseason because you've got Murphy, then you've got Shamar, who hasn't done anything. And then you got Sed Johnson and Isaiah Foskey, and that's it. That's your room. But because a premium draft pick will probably play, because honestly, I think you kind of want to do better than Joseph Osai when you look at free agency. You need more pass rush, even considering what Osai was able to bring you. And I want some more versatility on the defensive line to really improve that group compared to what Osai was able to bring. It's just almost like he's like a B- level free agent, and they need a B or a B+.
Yeah. Before we get to Mo, a quick thought on Dalton Risner. I think you're hearing the pitches that are happening from everybody. You're hearing them from coaches. You're hearing them. And that often concerns me, because that means they feel like they need to make. I've seen this happen in the past. It always sticks out to me the year Whitworth left, where there was a lot of pitching and praising happening before that, because I think people could sense like there could be a little bit of a battle here that needs to be fought to make sure that this happens. Because every time we hear about Dalton Risner, I know from coaches, I feel like, or specifically from Zach Taylor, we then soon after, and I like the future of Jalen Rivers too, and Lucas Patrick could be better. Like there's, they just like the makeup of the room. So I don't think because you're hearing these pitches and the pleading about Dalton Risner that it's a foregone conclusion. I do think everyone is in recognition that he was a really good fit here and he made sense. And if they care about the continuity of that room, and Dalton seems to want to be here, listening to the way he was talking. I mean, he seems to want to get this done before hitting free agency, and maybe feels some regret from it dragging on so long, and it has dragged on for him multiple years to maybe end that cycle for him. That there's probably an answer to be found before they get to free agency with Dalton, and we'll see where that happens. But I'm not going to say foregone conclusion. Again, free agency is weird. But I mean, what do you make of sort of his situation and all the, the outpouring of respect for Dalton and pleading for him to be back that we're hearing?
My biggest concern out of all of this is that the Bengals had the worst offensive guard situation in the league entering 2025. And what did they do at right guard? They got like a kind of backup center from a bad team and Lucas Patrick to be their right guard. That was the plan. Dalton Risner, for as bad, let's call it what it is, for as bad as Dalton Risner was in 2024, even Risner wasn't on the level that they were willing to go to at guard when they basically paid Lucas about as little as you can. And it didn't even come all the way back around until basically Dalton agreed to from what I understand, was a very near the minimum contract. So are they going to play this game again? And I keep going back to this line too. Like, let me set up the line first. like Dalton's a 10 out of 10 fit. Like he's not an all pro. He's not a pro bowler. He'll never be. But for your fifth guy in this scheme, what he showed, the energy he brings, you don't need me to tell you that the Bengals should bring Dalton Reisner back. Like that's as obvious as it can be. I remember a line I heard in 2023. I was told when you're paying Joe Burrow, you'll always have an Irv Smith somewhere. Maybe that's tight end. Maybe that's defensive tackle. Maybe that's line. Who knows? But you'll always have that spot where, you know what, we just couldn't get there. And even the Chiefs and the Bills and the Ravens have spots like that. Do the Bengals decide that the Irv Smith spot is going to be at guard and risk all that comes with that with Burrow? Like, or, you know, is it Barrett Carter is going to start and you hope he develops and that's your Irv Smith spot? Is it defensive tackle depth? Is it your edge rush rotation? Like it's going to be somewhere. I don't think it should be guard. I think they should bring Dalton back, but we'll see what happens.
The question is, what is that number? And I think that's when we talk about what is Dalton's number. It has been low his whole career. I mean, he's never made more than 3. But did he earn more than that by what he did here? What is the market for him? You know, guards get paid. Alex Kappa got paid more money than I ever would have imagined last year. Of course, the Raiders are like, yeah, Pete Carroll's fired and everybody's talking about their offensive line is trash. Probably could have seen that coming. But like, again, guys get paid. So what is his market? What do the Bengals view as that? We'll go through that as we go through free agency. Okay, let's get to, I've got a good run passer boot here for you, Charlie, that taps into something that I think is going to be interesting in the conversation we're going to have with Mo about quarterbacks and about, you know, their surroundings and coach and GM. So a good run passer boot for you today. Reminder, our run passer boots are brought to you by our good friends at Camargo Insurance. There's Josh. He's been the judge and jury of run passer boot all season long. Thank him so much for that. It's been so much fun. You've sent your submissions to Josh at Camargo Insurance. Look, send any of your questions that you have for us. You can send them there. But also, if you just want to get your insurance taken care of, please work with Josh. It's a true concierge experience. There's no fluff or run around. It's just one-on-one help from someone who gets it. He's a Growl Pal. He's one of us. He's somebody you can trust. Not your average agent either. Certified insurance and risk professional, helps business owners protect what they've built and plan for what's next. So if you own a small business, reach out to Josh and he'll assure that you have peace of mind that you have the best coverage available because he works with some of the best carriers in the industry. He'll find the perfect coverage for your home, auto, business, life insurance needs. Easy on you to pull it off. So if you're ready for that insurance, it's simple, personal, handled by someone who's a trusted Growl Pal. Reach out to Josh at Camargo Insurance. Josh at CamargoInsurance.com. All right, the run passer boot. This one comes from Joseph L. He says, who is the player or that of these tier 1 QBs? So Sando does his tiers, right? And the AFC tier 1 QBs have kind of been these same 4 guys. Patrick Mahomes, obviously, right? Take him out of this. The other 3, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson, have all had varying degrees of second fiddle to Patrick Mahomes over time here. They've all had the same head coach. They've all had the same general manager. Their careers have gone different. Allen has an MVP. Lamar has multiple MVPs. Allen has had double-digit wins every year, but he's 7-6 in the postseason. He's been to the 1 AFC Championship games back in 2020. He's more known for heartbreak. Lamar, 3-5 in the postseason. He's known for not doing it in the postseason. He's had 1 AFC Championship game, which was the loss at Kansas City. And then you have Burrow, who's been to a Super Bowl. He's been in an AFC Championship game, but we've had some of these low lows. Lamar's had injuries. Burrow's had injuries. Whose career would you take at this point? Run, pass, or boot? Burrow, Allen, Lamar Jackson.
Going to run with Burrow because at least Burrow's had the most postseason success. I'm even factoring in the fact that Burrow has made the playoffs in the last couple of years because of the highs of the postseason success. I'm also going to say that Burrow is the only quarterback who has been a part of a consistently always great offense. Josh Allen had a coordinator fired, and now even though their offense is good this year, but the receiver problems, I think they have passing game problems. Joe Brady's been on the hot seat. And then Lamar, I mean, he's had these lulls, partially due to injury. He's had a coordinator fired. Obviously, the lull this season, the skilled position depth, especially at receiver, has never been what it's needed to be. That's got to be frustrating for those guys to not always be awesome. So at least Burrow gets to always be awesome. I'll run with Joe. I'll pass Lamar because this is a tough one. I'm still going to stay with Lamar because of the multiple MVPs. He was in the AFC Championship game last year. I guess the one thing is, at least if you're taking Allen, he has the shot to win it all this year, which the others don't. So that's a good reason to pick Allen. But I'll go with Lamar second, Allen third.
Yeah, how different this conversation is in a month potentially, right? Like Josh Allen will be viewed so much different if he just makes that one run, because double-digit wins every year as a starter. I mean, they may have been lulls offensively at times, but they have consistently been a winner there, and that's a big part of it. But yeah, you're right. He's had these moments, and he's had huge moments in games against Kansas City. Obviously, they just have famously not been able to win those 13 seconds, et cetera. And so I would take Burrow because I think playing in a Super Bowl and having some of the success, I'm with you. Like, I think that trumps all of the other stuff and playing at an MVP level, even if he doesn't have one. But, the injury, having to go through this injury stuff is hard. I would go Allen, and I would probably boot Lamar just because I feel like people really hold his postseasons against him. And he has had postseason games, a lot of them, where he hasn't played well. Whereas you could maybe say that a little bit about Burrow. And when you look at their Super Bowl run, like, he was playing behind the worst offensive line in the history of the Super Bowl. So you don't hold it too much against him, but their defense was making the plays to get them to the end in a lot of those games. But Lamar's had games where it's been like, oh man, Lamar is not good in the postseason. And that kind of changes it for me a little bit, even though he's been arguably, his highs have been probably better than either.
I'm changing mine to pass Josh Allen because everybody loves Josh Allen and people seem to be mad about Lamar. So I'd rather be a guy who there are good vibes associated with.
Yeah, good vibes, Charlie. I like that. That, of course. All right, good stuff. I think it's relevant when we talk about continuity in head coach and GM in terms of, like, you don't see a lot of things change around elite quarterbacks. Like, when head coaches and GMs get the quarterback right, they tend to stick around. And that's just been the case. And these guys have had very similar kind of careers, I would say, which is, kind of interesting as we talk about. Is Sean McDermott on the hot seat? I don't know. Is John Harbaugh on the hot seat? I mean, Baltimore thinks he is, but I don't know that that's necessarily the case. It's just all very interesting situations surrounding these tier 1 AFC quarterbacks as they try to figure out a way to go forward. All right. Remember, folks at Camargo are awesome. Can't recommend them enough. Josh is the best. Go get a no obligation quote and make sure you have insurance you can trust, whether it's for yourself or your small business. Josh at CamargoInsurance.com. All right. Now bringing in our good friend and yours, Mo Egger of ESPN 1530. You are with us. It's great to have you here.
Can I start with a little bit of a visual aid? And I know this doesn't do anybody any good who's, listening audio only. So you might have to describe what's going on. But based on something you guys were talking about before, I have a visual aid. Are you ready for
it? I love visual
aids.
What do you got?
All right. So first is I have a miniature basketball.
That's a miniature basketball, correct.
Miniature basketball. I have, as you can tell here, a backboard and a rim. You see this?
Oh, yeah, there it is.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to see if I can pull this off without screwing things up more technically. Duke Tobin. It's very simple, okay?
Look at Mo Egger
do
getting
what
a
I'm
shot.
about to do. Make your layups, okay?
Make your layups.
Make your layups. So the ball went to the other part of the room.
He even got a shot up. Mo, you even got a shot up in the last 4 minutes. That's not easy.
That novel
it
concept.
Doesn't always happen. Yeah.
That's Dalton Reisner.
Yes.
That's
good.
Your layups. You've needed better guards for a while. You have one. The guy is pleading publicly, sign me. Here I am. This is almost unscrew-upable, but it's the Bengals, so you never know. Duke has a lot of really, really hard things in front of him. Duke has the equivalent of trying to get a shot off against Houston in the final 352 in the coming weeks and months. Very few of us trust him to do the hard stuff. You want to make me not trust you more? Blow the bunny, okay? Miss the layup. You are standing under the rim. There is no one within 8 feet of you. You don't have to throw it down with 2 hands. You don't have to try to pull off the rim. You don't have to try to win a slam dunk contest. Simply lay the ball off the glass and score 2 points. If you why add to your problems in life? Like, one of my biggest issues is I continually add to my problems. Duke Tobin has a lot of problems. He's got a lot of problems to solve. Why add to it by going, we brought that guy in to play guard. We've needed a player like that for a while. He wants to play here, but nah. Let's complicate things by not signing him. Duke, make your layups.
Who would have been the UC player in history that missed the most layups?
Adam Rajaniak.
Yeah. Immediately fires it off. Had that one ready. Okay, so there we go. Don't be like that guy. No,
or how about Victor Locken? Anytime he had to shoot with his left hand.
Yeah. Big Vic missed his share of layups. There's no doubt about it.
All right. I won't make you go through sad players in UC Hoops history. That's a sad enough situation. Let's focus on the Bengals and their sort of sad predicament. We saved these Zach Taylor, Duke Tobin topic for you. I have a column up on The Athletic, and I have chosen to turn off my my mentions, or at least silence them for a while from everybody probably yelling at me for my take on this, that this was, for this moment in time, actually the right decision to bring these 2 guys back. I feel a need to apologize to people listening for that being my view of things here. What do you make as the newsiest, most important element of the official now support for Duke Tobin, Zach Taylor running the whole thing back concept?
That Duke is going to talk to you guys on Friday. That's the different part of this, right? We're used to the Bengals announcing that the status quo remains. We're not used to the person in charge of the roster, the de facto general manager. We're not used to him answering questions as soon as the season ends, and answering questions about the decision to bring him back and the decision to maintain the status quo with the coaching staff. So that's different. And I hope that becomes standard. I hope on some level, you and I have talked about this, Paul. I hope on some level, more Duke Tobin transparency and availability becomes the norm. And it doesn't have to be every month, every week. But, you and I have talked about, during the bye week, that's just sort of a natural time where it would make sense for the person who builds the roster to answer questions. During training camp, in settings that are more than just mock turtle soup. I don't know that Duke is going to say anything that's going to make anybody feel any better, but I think his perspective on why things went awry this season would at least be interesting. And I think his thoughts on how he plans to fix this, and maybe his ideas of how things can be done differently, will be interesting. Maybe we don't get any of those things, but to me, that was the big takeaway. We got 2 different things that showed up in my inbox yesterday. One was the announcement that Duke and Zach are coming back, and I read it and went, okay, that didn't move my meter. When we got the one a few minutes later saying Duke's going to talk to you guys on Friday, I thought that's different, that's interesting, and so that to me was the big takeaway from Monday.
It was the first time kind of in the history of the organization that a front office leader has ever been held accountable by ownership.
Yeah.
Because typically that's been ownership. Mike Brown's not going to put out a statement in 2002 that he's himself on the hot seat. It's a reflection. Imagine that. It's a reflection of just how bad the Bengals have been from a front office perspective since 2022, but even 2021, just when you look at the defensive side of the ball. The line that I like to use is they haven't signed a defensive free agent who's better than Eli Apple since Eli Apple. And when you stack off seasons together of Sheldon Rankins, Geno Stone, etc., when you're 4 plans in at safety, when maybe my biggest criticism is how many guys have come in the draft, and just from how they go about their business standpoint, their consistency isn't what it needs to be throughout the tenure of their rookie contract. There have been too many times where a guy just wasn't ready for his shot and wasn't prepared for his moment. And some of those have bounced back from that completely. But the types of people and the evaluations you're getting there in terms of that being your whole plan to fix this defense hasn't been good enough. And then also to your point about Duke talking, like my other big question for Duke is like almost why are you doing this? Because Duke didn't have to. And the fact that a guy who notoriously likes to be behind the scenes, the guy who introduced himself at the pep rally before the Super Bowl by saying, "Hi, my name is Duke Tobin." Why are you in front of the cameras now? Is this your version of being held accountable through a conversation with ownership? Is this you saying, I need to hold myself accountable? I want to step outside of my comfort zone here. Those are my big picture thoughts on Duke.
Well, I mean, I think the one thing that's important that I think with a lot of people with this aspect of it that maybe got lost is that it's not that he doesn't talk, right? I mean, he did talk in Mobile. He does talk in Indianapolis. He does talk to us before the draft. He does talk at Mock Turtle Soup. It's just the fact of this is the accountability week. This is in front of the cameras. That's just it. It's in front of the cameras. It's face. And, going back to something, Mo, that you've always referenced and that we talk about a lot is that when he was sitting up there next to Mike Brown and Zach Taylor, it was, okay, this is your era. This is your team. You are the face of this decision of this time. And, I think we don't get that often in the building of this guy here is the face of when it goes wrong, when it has gone wrong. And now this is the first time where you're really seeing it. I think that's the truest thing is this is where now, okay, this guy who previously felt like untouchable family member now feels out there. Okay. And a little bit
almost like a normal GM.
Almost, right? So maybe take the de facto off at this point because this is a true, like, okay, maybe he's not untouchable, which I think was maybe a previous feeling. And it's Mike Brown kind of saying, okay, I'm not going to view Duke Tobin as untouchable for the first time.
Yeah. You mentioned the fact that he does talk, but nobody wants to hear from you until things are going poorly. Nothing's going poorly in Mobile. Nothing's going poorly at the combine. Nothing's going poorly at Mock Turtle Soup, I guess, maybe with the exception of the actual soup itself. And so, to me, like when you want to hear from leadership is when things are going poorly. I mean, yes. I don't need to hear from the captain of the airplane if things are going well, but when we start, sliding all over the place, captain better get on the thing and tell me what's going on. So I kind of view, and we talked about this during the season, on a human level, if I was Duke Tobin, I'm watching Zach Taylor stand up there 3 times a week and have to answer questions for things that he's not that responsible for. I would just go, dude, I'm not going to make you do this every single week without me taking some bullets myself. And again, the time to do that, I think, would have been during the bye week, just for his perspective on why things have gone poorly. I'm going to bet that on Friday, there's going to be more of a desire to talk about what's next and what lies ahead. And those things are important. But I guess for Duke, everything you guys just said, I agree with. Maybe this is all right, man, we kind of made you we made you the face of the Zach Taylor hire by putting you up on the dais. We put you up there and said, this is your deal. Okay, well, this team, this roster, and what's next is your deal. So you're going to have to answer questions for it. And I'm curious as to whether or not that becomes the norm. I'm curious as to whether or not there is a little bit more public accountability and transparency with relation to the de facto general manager. I hope the answer is yes. I'm skeptical that it will be.
So this now becomes the off season where everyone's coming back, where there's no changes. And what even is more interesting to me than like, is this, why does Mike view this as the right move? Why does Duke view this as the right move? Why does Zach view it as the right move from the coaching side? How do the players on the roster feel about it? Even more than all of that, the most interesting thing to me of all of this is the free agents they're going to sign in March. Because they've had guys come in, Orlando Brown, Hayden Hurst, Mike Gesicki, and many others who have come to Cincinnati to chase a ring. For better or for worse, they haven't gotten close there since 2022. But you've been able to get guys to put a concrete value on the idea of playing for a winner in Cincinnati. And when you're in a bidding war against the Jets for a defensive tackle in March, maybe the Jets are a bad example, against the Colts, let's say in March, is that guy going to, the ability to win in Cincinnati, does he still believe that in a way that pushes the negotiations maybe a little over the top? That to me is the defining question and bet the Bengals are making.
Yeah, partially. I've always kind of been of the believer that it's going to be a money game. Like, yeah, it'll break ties, but I think that plays with veteran dude who's still on the market in June. Like I in the deeper waves, out the jump, you got to come with money and you got to come with a plan. Okay. And that's going to go beyond win. That's how they have acquired most of the guys that have made big differences for them. They've come in as the highest bidder because it mattered to them more than anybody else in the league that was their guy. That is what it needs to look like in March. And that falls on Duke Tobin and Zach Taylor to do that in ways that they have done before when they felt like they've had clear issues in front of them. Fix the offensive line. Day one, first 10 minutes, Alex Kappa, Ted Karras are signed. They paid them more than anyone else was willing to and felt like they fixed the problem partially once we went with Kenwood Mall with Lael Collins and stuff and all that. But they had a plan, right? Attacked it, knew what they were trying to do. Need help up front, right? DJ Reader can be that guy. Like, went after it, paid him more than anybody else. This is a long time ago. And so I understand why people are like, show me what have you done lately? I get that. But I think that the problem, this is kind of the point of my column, is the lack of complexity in this offseason is why I'm for keeping these two guys at this moment in time and giving them another shot rather than kind of blowing it up, which most people want. And I understand why. This isn't about that not being a valid concern. It's that it's simple right now. And so adding complexity for this organization is not the right move right now. They are close enough with where they sit on offense and how simple this should be to handle. Mo, you literally had a basketball hoop doing layups out here earlier, okay? It should not be that hard to pull this off. And so if they can capitalize on how simple this is, that takes a team that oftentimes organizationally playing with a hand tied behind their back and allows them to just make a one-handed layup, okay, with it. And that's why I think you stick with it for this moment in time, because things are so simple. Do not make this harder on this organization right now by having to add in something like changing the coach and the GM and everything else. Keep it simple. Keep it to layups and mid-range jumpers, okay? Let's not make this harder than it needs to be. That's, to me, why this moment in time says stay, is because of everything you're saying. Like, they should be able to do this in free agency and go add the pieces that can fix this defense. Am I off?
No, I mean, the premise makes sense. By the way, I thought what we would do today on the air, Paul, is take calls in the 3 o'clock hour.
I'm fine.
Open up the phone lines. The premise makes sense. It's still a pretty damning indictment against the organization. That the biggest reason why you keep these guys is because we can't make things more complex. We can't handle an outside voice. We can't give an outside general manager a team that is half done, right? Because they are, there are, I guess with firings, maybe the number's not quite 18, but there are going to be 18 teams that have to figure out a way to jump back into the postseason. How many of them are set, especially if they bring back Dalton Reisner? How many of those teams are set on one side of the ball where you could legitimately make a case that you don't have to do anything? Things are so screwed up that we don't trust somebody else to handle that dynamic.
Yes. Have you been around here?
But that is a pretty, again, the basic premise does make sense, but it's a pretty damning indictment against this organization that, because it
just
because
takes time
because
for a new
the job is
here, though, Mo, right? I mean,
sure,
a new person coming in and learning the pitfalls of how things operate here differently than other places, and that person's also going to come in and have ideas of, well, I don't necessarily agree that this team is half set. I don't like these people that they have been behind, right? There's going to be change. And now we're going to hear about how a season was lost because of that change. When you were set and Joe Burrow's like, man, screw up one more season and Lord knows where this thing goes. Like, I think that's all part of it too. Not to interrupt, but like, I just feel like that's the other part of it here is that is the truth. You do kind of lose a season by bringing in somebody from the outside, learning how this works.
Again, that's a pretty damning indictment against the organization. That's not necessarily a damning indictment against Duke Tobin, but if the organization is such that it would require a well-qualified executive to take a year to learn the lay of the land and understand how this franchise works, that is, again, a really tough indictment. And again, I don't disagree with your basic premise. Like where you're coming from when you put it that way makes total sense. Hey, look, time is of the essence. We don't have a year for somebody to come in and figure it out. But oh boy, what a harsh sort of just indictment against the way the Bengals are structured and how they operate, that you would basically have to say, with Joe Burrow in his prime, we would have to punt on a season if we bring in somebody from the outside. That is, again, I don't disagree with where you're coming from, but oh boy, that doesn't make the organization look or sound very good, very efficient, or not inept.
You're both absolutely right. Kind of Zach's thesis statement yesterday was year 2 of this defensive staff. And now we know what we're looking for. And kind of the point that Zach made that I've been thinking about a lot since he made it was, oh, well, Al wasn't hired until near the end of January. And the staff wasn't put together basically until the 1st of February and all. Well, you know, like the 49ers, the Patriots, the Jaguars had no problem turning around their entire offseason, or their entire defense in one offseason while incorporating a new defensive staff in. In 2024, the Chargers, the Packers, the Commanders, the Eagles, they had no problem turning around their whole defense while they worked in a new defensive staff. And all the teams I just mentioned made the playoffs in their first year with their defensive staff. And the idea that it was taking on so much water by going through the coordinator and coaching changes last year that cost you a year, that's about like one of the worst possible things you could say about the Bengals. Like, that's the problem. But that also does make it true that they can't do that again in 2026, because that is just the reality of what it's like operating in the Bengals machine.
Right. A machine that, I mean, I think we're going on a record of like 18 straight episodes referencing Marco Wilson Tuesday, Charlie. But like, again, like that was what happened with the machine last year. The machine just stalled during the most important week of the year. And so we can talk about whatever BJ Hill and Joseph Osai and TJ Slayton were supposed to be. They weren't what was supposed to happen. They weren't. It was still a team that didn't sign a relevant linebacker. They still were and went with Logan Wilson or whatever the disconnect was with all of that. Like, they're clear for whatever was right or wrong. Like, it didn't connect between coach and personnel department, or personnel department and coach. The clarity of the message was obviously lost in what was needed there. So at least that exists now. Okay. I'm not saying that they shouldn't have been able to fix it in a year. I bet all those teams that you mentioned signed a bunch of impactful free agents. Okay. But this one didn't. Okay. And so if at least there's clarity that exists on what they need, and simplicity in that clarity that says, okay, we know that we need this, this, and this, and we know how he plans to deploy them. We've seen it. We've made those mistakes. Al Golden and Zach Taylor have made those mistakes in not being clear enough. And the personnel department now has a clearer view of what that needs to look like on the field and how that goes wrong if you don't deliver it. And hopefully that helps them make the layups and hit the mid-range jumper and get this thing back to being where it needs to be defensively, for a group that did add some pieces that got better in the draft last year, for whatever that's worth or how much value they end up giving you. But the growth that they did see, I think, also is part of that of, okay, the DJ Turners, the Miles Murphys of the world, even the linebackers that at least they got better over the course of a season when they were asked to do unfathomable things as playing two rookies next to each other. Is at least there's progress there. The players that were given did improve and get better. I just think there's the simplicity in that, and the clarity in that focus of what to do this offseason is the part of this.
You're right. I would have argued last year, sitting here having the same conversation about the offseason, it was abundantly clear to me what they had to do. I mean, fix
but
the
there
defense.
there were more obstacles last year.
Yeah, but
I mean,
fix the defense.
Trey, Jamar, Stadium. It was more complex for them to handle.
Yeah,
and they couldn't handle
it. But it was more complex because they made it complex. And so, but at the end of the day, it was all offseason like, hey, you guys remember last year when Joe Burrow was the best quarterback in the sport and he didn't make the postseason? That bad defense? You sure? We're going to just – and, so as the offseason unfolded, part of what made this season to me so frustrating was you could see a lot of the defensive issues coming from a mile away. Now, maybe we didn't think they would be – what's the team we always compare them to, Paul? The Dayton Triangles, the Toledo –
Dayton Triangles.
Yeah. Maybe we didn't think it'd be that bad, but all offseason, it's like, boy, they had a really crummy defense last year. Are we sure? We sure not adding a linebacker who can make an impact? Are we sure running it back with Geno Stone? Are we sure not addressing safety at all? Like they missed layups last year, and now I'm going to assume that they're going to make layups again this year. Again, Paul, you and I talked last week about how one of the tests is going to be what they do at linebacker, right? Because they'll probably go get a 3 technique, and they'll probably add a pass rusher. And it's hard for me to imagine they don't replace Geno Stone with somebody who can play football. But do they run it back with the 2 rookie linebackers and default to, hey, year of experience, it's going to be better? Or do they go, screw it, we don't have time to wait. Those guys might be on the team, but we can't play those 2 guys next to each other and expect dramatically different results. That is, for me, a litmus test. So is the Dalton Risner thing. Again, it's easy, right? This offseason, we're going to bring back Duke because it's pretty easy what they have to do. It's not easy what they have to do, but the things they have to address aren't that hard to identify. Cool. Come back to Dalton Risner. Here is a player who solved a problem. And maybe how you got that player isn't the path you want to go down, where you wait till right before the season. Dalton's own admission is, I want to get a deal done early. I'd like to play here. Tell Duke Tobin, I want to play for the Cincinnati Bengals. I want to fill this role that I filled capably this year. It could not be any easier. If the ball didn't trickle away, I would make another layup for you. So let's see if the argument for bringing Duke back, and I'll be honest with you, Zach coming back doesn't bother me as much as it does a lot of other people. But if it's bring Duke back because you know what, it's easy. What they have to do is not that hard to identify. Let's not complicate it by bringing in somebody from the outside. Cool. Stand underneath the rim, lay the ball in, and don't overly complicate things with having to go get another guard in free agency when you've got a guy who is stating publicly, I'd love to play here again. If you can make that layup, if you can get that done, okay, fine. Then we'll go to the next. But if we get to March and it's, well, they didn't do anything with Dalton Risner, and so now add to the list, figure out who's going to play his position. They will have failed the first basic litmus test of this offseason by missing a wide open layup.
I've got good news and bad news, I guess, if you're the Bengals. The good news for the Bengals is they do have much less work to do, in my opinion, than they had at this point a year ago. I remember last year on the mock offseason, the only guy who was locked in was Logan Wilson to a starting spot for the following season. And Logan only lasted 6 games. It turned out the Bengals needed or could have been in position to add anywhere on 11 spots in the starting lineup on that defense. And at least entering 2026, you got Miles, you got your outside corner duo and Dax and DJ. Jordan Battle is going to start on the 2026 Bengals. You can talk about defensive tackles and cap casualties, but you could also bring them back. It's a better spot than they were in 2024. And now all we're saying is they just need to recreate what they did in 2021 in the offseason. And there's the bad news. Because I actually think they need to have a better offseason than they did entering 2021. Because at least entering 2021, they were coming off the backs of a nice 2020 offseason as well. Entering 2021, the Bengals already had Hubbard, DJ Reader, their linebackers, Jermaine Pratt and Logan Wilson, and they had their safety duo, the strength of that entire defense in Jesse Bates and Von Bell. And then they got Trey, a pass rusher. They got Mike, a slot corner. They got a pass rushing defensive tackle in Larry Ogunjobi, and they got a starting outside corner in Chidobe Awuzie. The Bengals need another star pass rusher again. They need a starting slot corner again. They need at least one pass rushing defensive tackle again. And this time it's not a corner, it's a safety that they need. And that's not even counting linebacker, where they probably have to add as well. That's not even counting depth. And the depth of the defense isn't in a great spot. So I'd argue they have even more to do.
Go ahead, Mo.
And then on top of all that, if I think back to this past offseason, how many complex situations will they create? So by their own admission, Higgins and Chase got more complex than it probably needed to be, right? So they had to pay him more. It dragged into 2025 in ways that wasn't good for anybody. Trey Hendrickson became a thing all offseason and summer long. They draft a guy in Shamar Stewart, who still may be an excellent player, but they draft a guy in Shamar Stewart, I guess not thinking that that could turn into a thing if they don't get a deal done, or at least not understanding that maybe he would not want to sign the contract that was first slid across the desk to him. So like there were all these things that I wonder this year, yeah, man, fix the defense. But between now and August, what else is there going to be? That class of 2023 players, the draft class that you wrote about, Paul, there's a lot of dudes that you're like, man, want that guy here. Among those players, who is it going to be too complicated to sign? And then is there going to be a holdout, a hold in? And I know a lot of NFL teams have these things, but it feels like with the Bengals, there's always these pseudo self-made problems that overly complicate getting ready for the season. And I don't know that Duke Tobin's going to have the answer for that on Friday, but what sort of organizational misstep? They should have traded Trey Hendrickson, right? They didn't. So what did they get? They got Treys of our lives and a player who only played less than half of the season. The Shamar Stewart thing took on a life of its own. How much of that was counterproductive to winning? It certainly wasn't helpful. What things along the way will they do to get in their own way that takes what should be at least a reasonably easy offseason to identify what they need to fix and make things even more complex than they need to be?
Who's ready for 1 week from the opener? Both starting corners are holding out, right? Like who's ready for that? When the extension talks are breaking down and we're documenting DJ Ivey as the starting corner on the opening day against Kansas City at home, open in orange, right? Like here we go. I'm not saying that from any place of thinking that's going to happen, but that is the type of things that have happened in the past, seemingly every year. Every year. Jesse Bates. Every single year, there's been one of these. Jesse Bates to T. Higgins to Trey Hendrickson to Jamar Chase to Joe Burrow. All of them have taken their turns with this stuff. Back to AJ Green. Like, right, we don't have to keep right. Like, it just as tale as old as time around here. So you're right. It is about that. It is about not making these same mistakes and blunders that have happened in the past. Will they do it? Maybe. The one last parting shot, and I'll let you out of here, Mo. One last parting shot to this point is all of this said, even if they did say, you know what, you're right, this is an indictment on us, we've got to bring in new people here. You're also counting on them to get that hire right. Okay. No doubt. And you think and the odds of that happening aren't necessarily very high. Maybe they are. I don't know. But you know, we do know that you're also now going down that uncertain path as well. Maybe I'm just saying for this moment in time, it feels like a devil that you know might be better than the devil that you don't. That's
again.
Open the lines, Mo. Open the lines.
Damning indictment against. I mean, you're not wrong, right?
Yeah,
it's like whenever somebody brings up like, well, they, you know, the Dolphins deal where they, you know, reportedly offered him a billion picks, and the instant reaction is, well, how would they have screwed him up, right? Like that's just.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you do operate as a fan thinking if they do this, they'll still screw it up, right? Whatever it is. So I get it, but again, it's such a harsh statement about the way this franchise operates, and that's sobering. It's sobering.
Yeah.
but we'll hear from Duke on Friday. And I'm sure everybody's just going to walk away from that going, okay, cool. Duke's the guy. Go fix the team.
That's usually the way it goes. I look forward to all the reaction from that. And I look forward to you opening the lines this afternoon back in studio at the iHeart Studios. I'm excited.
We are back in. I might bring the backboard and ball with me. I don't know.
Let's see how many layups we can do Adam H impressions. Thanks, Mo. See you.
All right, see you guys.
All right, always great catching up with Mo. So thanks again to him. I feel like that conversation, Charlie, is a good reminder that pitchers and catchers are right around the corner. Right?
What a transition.
Let's take a deep breath. And the Reds are right around the corner. You fly to spring training February 7th. Is that what you said? Yeah.
Super Bowl Sunday, whatever that is. I'm fired up. Not that anyone cares about this, but I booked my place to stay. I got a great place to stay this year. I'll be there the whole way out. And genuinely, a lot going on, even though that hasn't been reflected with necessarily the moves they've made. There's genuinely a lot that's changing and evolving with this team. And
you can follow all of it on Stacks with Charlie and with BG, Brian Giesenslaw. And, we're so excited about year 2, man. I am pumped for our growth. And if you want to partner with the show, if you don't know about the show, first of all, you should make sure you're subscribed and listening to Power Stacks everywhere you get your pods, on YouTube, on the YouTube channel there. Of course, all the shows are up there. Go back and listen. If you want to just feel happy again, go back and listen to The Clinch Show, which is one of the great podcasts in Cincinnati sports history as far as I'm concerned. I mean,
did I do that yesterday? Maybe.
Yeah.
That's not a joke.
Yeah. Well, it's great stuff. If you want to listen, go back and listen. And of course, we'll have all the shows throughout the off season, mailbags and Reds Fest shows coming up and spring training. Charlie will be out there the whole time, all the insight on Reds that you want. If you want to partner with the show,
yes.
We would love to have you. And we're doing packages now where you can do free agency and draft with the Bengals along with Power Stacks as a summer combo. If you want to do both, a way to kind of broaden and touch on multiple demographics, we'd love to have anybody who wants to partner with us. And, Charlie and Brian are going to be crushing it. And that show is growing as fast as can be.
What I love is just the loyalty in the audience, genuinely meeting people who have told me about kind of the role the show has in their Reds fandom, hearing and kind of following and building that community on social media as well. That's been my favorite part. And it's been a really cool way to kind of tap into to the Reds fan base in a more direct, personal way.
Yeah, and we're hoping to do even more stuff of growing that community, which has been cool to see build up around you guys, and you guys have just been crushing it on that show. So fun. So if you want to hit us up, the growerpodcast at gmail.com, send it to me, or powerstackspod at gmail. Either way, we'll see that and let us know. We love cooking up custom stuff or whatever anybody would want to do. So hope to get you in on that. All right, let's get back into some Bengals stuff here. There's a few more leftovers, maybe not as notable in terms of the conversations that were had about free agents. I'll start with this one in Mo's honor, Geno Stone. And I think everyone's favorite, he's not in the plans. Okay. It's not like they're like, all right, let's run back Geno Stone, but the conversation around him is interesting. I know you talked to him for a while yesterday, Charlie.
He projected a lot of confidence, and I know that's not what I was expecting. So my question to Geno, and frankly, I phrased this more directly than I would with another player. I asked, do you feel like the Bengals would have interest in bringing you back? Is what I asked him, and he said, I think there'd be interest here. It's their decision. I'd love to be here. I have a great relationship. We'll see what it is. Then this part was really interesting. He said, I know that I have a lot of respect around the league. I'm always talking to people after games and things like that. Whatever happens, happens. I'll worry about myself when whatever happens, happens. To me, that, and kind of talking to Geno further, still views himself as a starter, despite the fact that he was probably one of the, I haven't watched all 32 starting free safeties in the league, but I would imagine that he was one of the 5 worst starting free safeties in the NFL in 2025. And that confidence and view of his role in a defense was my main takeaway from talking to Geno.
Yeah. I know. I'm curious to see. I mean, I'm curious to see, he's not going to be signed as a starter somewhere, and even if he wants, certainly not anything where he's not at the very least in competition with probably a fairly highly drafted rookie. And I don't know how much he thinks he's going to make. Like, that's just, I just don't get any vision that there's like anybody has any interest in that game anymore. And I will say, historically, they've done a decent job in recent years of recognizing, okay, that guy stinks. He needs to not be here anymore, right?
I'll say this, I understand why he thinks this way. I disagree with it. Gino thinks that he wasn't necessarily put in situations where he was able to be at his best because there wasn't a lot of run help in front of him, because he wasn't able to be just a true center fielder on as many passing downs, because he wasn't really used as a blitzer until later in the season. I understand how, as an NFL player, that's what you think. But that confidence also is viewing, I think, how he's going to approach this free agency and what he prioritizes, which, again, doesn't fit with the Bengals.
It does not. Okay, let's go into the other one is Joe Flacco, which I think is kind of a case all his own in terms of the ball's in his court. He's earned that leverage as a 40-year-old dude, and he's played enough. I think there's an assumption. He used, the term of being selective in where he goes next. And he has that right. Like, if he's going to want to play, he would prefer to play. He's not going to rule out the idea of being a backup or coming back to Cincinnati. And if that's where it lands, that's where it lands. It's a matter to me of, because there will be other guys, the Kyler Murrays of the world, attainable players, retreads that will be available, as there are every offseason. And that might even be more in vogue this offseason than any that we can remember because of what happened during the course of this year with the Daniel Joneses of the world and others. And so we'll see how that plays out. I am not going to rule out him coming back the same way that he didn't, because I think in a world where, if he's counting between potentially being a bridge, like, if he can get that, I think that's what he does. But the question is going to be, does that opportunity exist for Joe Flacco? To me, if it doesn't, he says, but I still want to be part of a team, this would be the number one spot that he would probably end up in.
I see two fits for Flacco on the market just on a complete surface level. Can he get Kansas City through Mahomes' rehab from the torn ACL, however long that lasts? Can he, be their guy in OTAs and training camp? And of course, Flacco can carry himself like a QB1 in that manner, specifically in practice. And then I don't know how many games Mahomes is going to miss, but then get you through those games. And then when Mahomes comes back, all of a sudden Flacco's tradable, Flacco's expendable, Flacco is going to be, Flacco would be able to then find a shot elsewhere that he could start, just like he found midseason in 2025. Another spot to me that makes sense is a place that he's played, Indy. If Daniel Jones just isn't their plan and they want to, they bring in a rookie, but they want a bridge guy, or maybe even they want to bridge till when Daniel Jones is back from an Achilles injury, that would make sense. I strongly believe, like you said, Flacco's positive feelings about the Bengals and Zach and Burrow and the organization. And I think it was a great experience for him that he believed a lot in, but I think he really wants to play. And there isn't even a chance for him to get any first team reps in practice here. Now, if it's November and Burrow gets hurt, that's another story.
There's a third seat open there. Okay. And that is his couch. Okay. That is working out at the high school, hanging out with his family, and being the guy who's on call, because these positions open up. Training camp, the quarterback gets hurt, week 2, week 4, whatever it is, and you're sitting there and you let everybody, they're pulling Phillip Rivers out, dad bod and all.
I think that's kind of the move. That might be the move. If you're Flacco,
I would do. If I were Joe Flacco, he's now done this multiple times, where he's had to just pick up a system and shown he can do it. That makes him the first call if something goes wrong. And you don't have to deal with the offseason stuff and being away from your family. Now, he said, look, my kids want me to play till I'm 50. He's like, my wife's not quite the same. He's like, but they are really supportive of me continuing to go out and do this, even though there is time taken away from them in some capacity. But to me, I think that is probably the move. And that's one that the Bengals maybe have in their back pocket. Now, what do they do? Because you can't count on that. What do they do at backup quarterback in the meantime? I don't know. Like that's maybe a little bit more of a riddle for them to figure out. I do know that position is important.
The good news is they put a whole list together before week 6. So you can now just smooth out that list that you threw in the trash. What was it reported that like Sam Howell was on it? Like guys like that. I honestly plan to do a deep dive give me 2 months, sometime over the next 2 months on what the backup quarterback market looks like for the Bengals this spring.
Yeah. But I think Flacco is in that mix depending on what his decision ends up being, and we'll see what that lands. But it was cool yesterday. I mean, he's signing jerseys for guys, for Jamar and T, and like just kind of very, as you might imagine, just gracious dude, great perspective, saying and doing all the right things, and just, you know, made so many fans in this organization during his time here. I think, you know, they would, if there was any way that he could help them and it was a possibility, he would be the first call for them for sure. So Stone and Flacco, kind of their own things. Cap cut potential, just to touch on a few of those. You're going to start with 2 main ones. That's BJ Hill, TJ Slayton. BJ Hill would save you $4.8 million, but would take on 7.3 in dead money. You know, that deal doesn't look great. They need upgrades on their defensive line, obviously. Let's start with BJ. I think it's one of the tougher decisions when you know how they typically operate and not wanting to take on much dead money and where they're at with that position. He has this $2 million roster bonus on day 5 of the league year that's going to be an important tipping point. How do you view it, Charlie?
I think he sneakily had like one of the most interesting seasons on the team. Like, we never talk about BJ, but there was like a lot of stuff going on. Like he missed basically all camp with a foot injury. He was on the injury report for what felt like every week for one way or another. And sometimes that was rest, but BJ even told me some days I felt like I couldn't practice. Some days I couldn't feel like I could play the game, but he played all 17. So it was a battle grind through a year for BJ. And the thing we all point to is he didn't impact the passer. He had 4 sacks. One of them was when Shedeur fell. 2 of them were on really long extended plays. His pressure rate ranked 69th out of 102 qualified defensive linemen. You're paying him to be your pass rush. Well, that's what's funny. You're paying him to be your pass rush defensive tackle, but they didn't use him like that this year. He was a early down run stopper exclusively, and then Jenkins took that spot on third downs. So when I asked BJ about his pass rush production, he said, I just didn't play a lot on third downs. If you really look at it, how many one-on-ones did I have a game? And now a part of that too is similar to Geno Stone, similar to what any player would say with kind of how they view themselves with their confidence that you want every player to have. But the Bengals needed him to be their best pass rushing defensive tackle, never used him as a pass rushing defensive tackle. But now one thing in his defense, the early down run defense up the middle was stout at defensive tackle. So give him credit for that. But kind of there was a lot going on with BJ this season.
There was enough going on that I certainly could see them keeping him around, partially because I don't know how you're buying Chris Jenkins at this point. Like, I mean, I would call him Myles Murphy 2.0, but I mean, as is well documented, I had much more faith in Myles Murphy at this point.
At least Myles had traits.
Yes, and had shown flashes. We've never seen a flash from Chris Jenkins, as far as I'm concerned, except in camp when he tossed Lucas Patrick, right? Like I just don't see that. I don't see it happening. I don't see a guy who you feel like I felt like there was always questions of Myles has that dog in him, but I always felt like it really mattered to him. Like he wanted to be good. I just don't get that same sense from Chris. And what do we really know? Like,
I'm not a Chris Jenkins guy either.
I'm not like that's where I stand on it. Like, and maybe people disagree, and we don't know these guys as well as they know themselves, as well as their teammates would probably tell you. It's just the sense that you get. And so for that fact, like I think that's where I see BJ, the dead money, the lack of development from Chris Jenkins to me points to them saying, you know, he was hurt last year. At the very least, he can play a role. We need to be better. there needs to be another player added. And whether that's, are you pairing BJ Hill with Peter Woods? Are you know what I mean?
Sounds
like,
fun.
is that right? Well, that's probably what you're just taking another shot at what Chris Jenkins was supposed to be, but with like a real guy. Is he in some kind of a rotation with whatever you end up doing with the other guy we're about to talk about? Like, I don't know what all that looks like, but they're given those two factors and his versatility and the idea of him being healthier next year. I certainly think there's a good chance that he could be back. And not,
I'd like Chris Jenkins to be like your 3.5, like your 3, but you have a defensive end who can move inside, so that makes him your 4. And we've been critical here. I will say in his defense, I talked to Jerry Montgomery last week, who I'll use these quotes all off season. Like, Jerry had some very critical things to say about all basically of the defensive linemen. Jerry was positive about Chris. So Jerry kept it real, and that makes you not buy in, but that gives you some credibility when you say some solid things about the trajectory of Chris Jenkins. But I think as a whole, I know we're talking about cap casualties, but this is going to be the defensive end of the defensive line. Like, they need to load this unit up. So everyone is a step down on the totem pole compared to where they were in 2025.
Yeah. It's okay if BJ Hill's around and he's just playing a back end role. Like, right?
The BJ Hill role.
If BJ Hill, it was his role in the first place, right? BJ Hill and Chris Jenkins are backups in front of players that are better than them. Now you're on to something. That's the idea. If you have enough room to make that happen, and that's probably the bigger question. Now, TJ Slayton, it was signed last year. The money saved on TJ Slayton would be over 6.2 to be exact, with 2.5 dead. So much more of a traditional cap cut that you see from the Bengals over the years. How did he play? They don't have another answer. I guess McKinley Jackson in terms of a run stuffing nose tackle, right? Like, I don't know that they have somebody to replace that. How good did he do at that job? I don't know. Where do you fall on TJ Slayton?
I'll start. So if you're cutting him, you're replacing him with McKinley in theory. I'll start with Jerry Montgomery's quote on McKinley Jackson. He has a long ways to go. A lot of mistakes have been made. He has to be able to learn from his mistakes. That's where being coachable comes in. Hey, you're stepping the wrong way or getting reached. We've got to fix this. This is how we fix it. This can't keep showing up. Those are things where he really has to take the next step so he can be a valuable asset. Otherwise, it's going to be very hard for him to get on the field. Yes. That makes it a lot more likely to me that TJ Slayton is back in some way in 2026, unless, and this is me mock offseason, mock GMing, maybe even this isn't even realistic, unless you just bring back DJ Reader, who's a free agent.
Ooh, there you go. He is out there, even if just for the personality, right? I mean,
yeah.
How
and
DJ
then
Reader's play? DJ Reader's play, and boy, we're in the sheets now, right? Like, let's go. DJ Reader, his play has done what the Bengals feared it would do. It has taken a step back, and like Lions fans, if they were on here right now, would attest to that. Like, he hasn't, I think, been some major signing that maybe they might have thought that he would have been, but he's been good. He's been fine. And if you could say that same thing about TJ Slayton, which I would say he's been good, he's been fine, right? Can you get the same level of play you got from TJ Slayton out of DJ Reader for the same, if not less money? Then yes, for the personality alone, it would be worthwhile to sign that. This team who had their backbone extracted when DJ Reader left. And we talked about, some of the consequences of that. Perhaps he's somebody who could be a great role player for a room that needs veterans that have the right attitude and culture and all of that stuff that was a part. I could see that. And the Bengals do love bringing people back now. I could see that. And I think you could get the same level of play you got out of TJ Slayton out of DJ Reader next year, potentially for less.
And now I think TJ was fine. Like, I think TJ statistically, actually, analytically, he took a huge step back. Like, I forget the stats specifically, but like Bill Barnwell was a huge TJ Slayton guy because he had some really, like, Bill's great. Bill had some really advanced work that showed that he was the most like productive interior nose in the NFL in 2024. TJ took, according to Bill, took a big step back with that in 2025. So, but it was still useful. It was still a starting-ish caliber nose, but not to the level where you wouldn't look at other options, especially considering the fact that, one, Zach Taylor said, challenge the veteran leadership on the defense multiple times. And two, DJ is one of the best veteran leaders this defense has ever had. And three, maybe even if they just look for the next Mike Pennell, maybe that's just what they do here at nose.
What can you get for $6.2 million compared to the problems that you have, right? And are you creating a bigger one if you move on from TJ Slayton? That's sort of the math that they'll have to work through here. Okay. All right. Outside of that, I mean, I think there's Oren Burks, Cody Ford are going to save you $5 million against the cap combined by letting those two guys go. And so that happens almost certainly. So
one thought on Oren, like I like Oren, but I think what they need more in the rotation is a linebacker who can take off of Demetrius's plate the thing where he lines up on the edge and has to set the edge, and also where he has to challenge fullbacks. So if you're like, get a cheap linebacker who can do that, that's not just Oren. That's just not Oren's game.
Meant to mention this at the top of the show and forgot. If you were like, wait, what happened to Rewatch? The Rewatch Linebackers show is happening Wednesday with everything that was going on in the news yesterday, and I was wanting to get to all of that stuff first. It felt silly to put linebacker breakdown in front of that. So that Rewatch coming Wednesday, where we will dive into Barrett Carter, Demetrius Knight, some more Oren Burks. You'll hear from linebackers coach Mike Hodges, a conversation that we had last week. I talked to Knight a little bit more yesterday. We've got some tape, some stats. It's an interesting dive into a very interesting position as this team goes forward. That is coming your way, though. We have not forgotten about it. So got that coming to you. I want to tap into a few more things. I got some business to tend to. We've got to talk about the Growler bet. The Growler bet from this past week was total points by the Bengals, which 18 was a tough number to hit. It would have been surprised. I would have been really impressed if somebody would have knocked out that 18 on it. There was a 19 and a 17. So close, but not quite there. The prize, because our live shows for the season are over, was going to be, we're going to send a Growl Pal t-shirt out. And so I don't get to send this Growl Pal t-shirt out. And I thought, wait, I wanted to, though. And this is my opportunity. I need to give the proper respect to somebody who had one of the great runs in Growler bet history earlier this year, had many so closes, many was hitting them on the head and losing tiebreakers. All of it felt unfair, even for me, who I sort of enjoy the so close element. I want to shout out Tyler Thurston, who had an unbelievable run this year and came away with no rewards, despite hitting Growler bet after Growler bet in an incredible fashion. So Tyler, send us, email me. And
he still found the fun in it, even when things weren't going his way.
Yeah. I want to make sure we get a Growl Pal t-shirt sent to Tyler. So Tyler, hit me up, hit the growerpodcast at gmail.com up, and we'll get your address and get you a Growl Pal shirt sent your way. You are our winner for the season. You win since no one else hit that 18 number, which was a tough one to hit. I do have a couple shout outs on subject headers on that. This one, in honor of you, Charlie, being here, was from Ray White, who wanted to make sure he showed love for Power Stacks with an all right, Chaz, let's get right to the Growler bet, which I appreciate is a good starting point since he's been waiting all year to get that one on board. A Seinfeld reference from what we were talking about a couple weeks ago, Paul Grega with a T-bone. No, there's no T-bone Growler bet. Tyler Skull McWilliams, welcome to Cincinnati. Our economy is based on Growler bets, which is a great reference to my favorite Cleveland tourism video that we've referenced many times before. A New Year's one from Sam Coffey. Should old acquaintance, parentheses, Geno Stone, be forgot and never brought to mind? Well done. And I think to properly wrap this entire season of Growler bets up, Chris Whitney, this season sucks Growler bet was just the subject header. Direct, to the point. And I appreciate that. Well done. Well done by everybody. Thanks to everybody for participating in Growler bets all year. I do always enjoy hearing all of the opinions that come along with these submissions, and it's been great. So appreciate everybody doing those. Let's see. We've got I've got Arby's. Do you have any good stories? Just any random miscellaneous stories from either locker clean out or the last couple of days that you want to share, Charlie?
It's a good question. I'm trying to think if there's an interview nugget I haven't shared. The one guy I didn't get to and I wanted to was Jalen Davis finally hitting free agency and how I just wasn't able to run into him in the locker room yesterday. Nothing great here. That's an accountability moment on my part, not coming prepared with an RB.
Well, I do think we should make sure we give a proper shout out to Orlando Brown, who was the 100%. Winner of the Media Cooperation Award. And he's done a very tough feat. Okay. He has won over 2 curmudgeonly media beats. Okay. He has been the Good Guy Media Cooperation Award winner in both Baltimore and Cincinnati now over the course of his career. And he has been an incredible dude to work with. I always talk about like, these guys don't have to be good to us. They don't have to care about thoughtful answers. We just ask that, you just want them to be there and answer questions that help us do our job, right? They can do that at whatever level they want to. Orlando is above and beyond wanting to help. And then on top of it, he is like one of the few people that comes up and like wants to immediately know how you're doing. Talk about what your business, your family, your whatever, like, and that's pretty rare. And I very much do appreciate that element about Orlando. He's just a good dude.
Can I give a shout out to his Reds fandom? Like he's locked. He was wearing a Reds hat yesterday as he got the award. Locked in. Like he pulled me aside one day for an end of season debrief, and I don't think he'd mind me sharing this. He had a lot of great questions. One of them was, why didn't Will Benson play more? And what a great like harbinger. Like if you really know, like if you really watch the Reds, like that's the question you ask. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's the real ones know. Like, why didn't Will Benson play more? And he's a real one. I see him at the ballpark all the time, and he's probably the one guy in the Bengals locker room who's locked in with the Reds in that way.
Yeah. We didn't really talk about him in the cap casualty conversation, and perhaps you should when you look at his number. They would save $14.2 million against the cap and take on 7, almost 8 dead money if they moved on from him. To me, it's just as simple as he is in the last year of his deal, and he is a guy that they like the continuity. Did he play at a huge level this year, at the level that, premier left tackle? No. And he would probably admit as much to you. But can you go get something better while messing up the chemistry that has been sort of the talk of this second half of the season was the offensive line chemistry. Having that settled and coming back is such a huge part of why they feel good about themselves going forward in this offseason. Would you mess with that, thinking that you can do better than what Orlando Brown gave you at left tackle, considering he was a captain, a real like core center of what they were doing there up front? That I don't see that as being something that they're going to do.
My Orlando Brown take is that the Ringer dropped their top 40 for free agents, and they had one offensive tackle in the top 40. And it was a guy who I'd never heard of, Cole Van Lanen, who wasn't even a full-time starter for Jacksonville this year, but apparently must have come on very strong in the second half of the year. But since I read that story, Van Lanen has signed a contract that pays him more than Orlando Brown. Yeah. The offensive tackle market is ridiculous. One, these guys aren't hitting free agency. Two, the ones that do, ones I'd never heard of, who behind the scenes have some good underlying stuff, are getting paid. You're not getting a good offensive tackle if you let Orlando Brown Jr. go.
No. I will say I think one of their first 3 picks in the draft should probably be an offensive tackle. And because they're going to need a swing tackle anyway.
The miracle of the season is that Brown and Mims didn't get hurt, because that could have been like a real turning point.
No doubt. I mean, I think the 8 plays that Cody Ford had to take were a disaster for Joe Burrow. So imagine, that is something that they do need to tidy up a little bit and be thinking about the future. So I know I've referenced, we've talked about this a couple of times on the show, but no one wants to go down the Cedric Ogbuehi, Jake Fisher zone again. But at a certain point, that's where they're at. And that's where you have to be at in this league, because free agent markets for tackles look like this all the time. You either pay more than you want to, or you just are going through scraps in free agency. You've got to draft one, you've got to hit one, or hope to get lucky. It's hard to do. So that will be a part of their offseason plan too. My last Arby's is this. I just got to ask that we come together as a collective city, as media institutions, and stop giving a damn what Nick Lachey has to say. Please. Can we do this? Can we stop when Nick Lachey gets frustrated and tweets something about the Bengals or the Reds or whoever, that it's not news, right? Look, I know there's Love is Blind people out there, and I'm sure there's boy band people out there. I'm over this guy being the voice of Cincinnati. Stop with it. Can we stop caring? Be as frustrated as he was. That's fine. No one has a problem with anybody voicing their opinion. Why does it have to be news with push alerts and at the top of pages? What are we doing? Stop. I just ask that we stop. We have Clooney now. If this was Clune, if we were talking about the Clune saying I'm sick of whatever with the Reds or the Bengals or FC Cincinnati or government or whatever, okay. All right, I'm listening. All right. Let's talk about it. Front page news. Let's not do that. Let's be done doing this with Nick Lachey, please.
Paul, I think that's the most passionate I've ever heard you on a podcast.
Yeah, I know. Certain things bring it out of me. I felt like I needed to apologize to people in the media room yesterday, because this started yesterday and it just came over me, and I can't hold it back sometimes.
This
sure
is how
Nick
I feel when a good Disney Channel reference comes to the top of my head.
I'm sure Nick is a nice guy, and maybe he's listening right now. And I don't have a problem with him as a person or a career or anything, or not caring about Cincinnati sports, all the way back to his Jessica Simpson show, where he was always sitting there grinding out UC hoops games. That was good. It's good. It was nice to see that someone was out there representing that. That's great. I think it needs to be done with being a news item. That's all I ask. Shouldn't be too much.
I'm in favor. You got to vote here.
I think that's a great place to wrap up a very long show. As it always is. Charlie, I appreciate your time. As always, you've given more of it than I ever could ask for. And guess what? Bring it on back tomorrow, buddy. We're doing linebackers on the rewatch. So it continues. We've got plenty more takes to get off. And one more reminder to all of you, go to, in the show notes, go to growerpodcast.com, and you can hit the GoFundMe link if you want to support Jay with everything he's going through right now. Want to make sure you have an outlet for that. So many of you have reached out. Thank you to all of you that have reached out to me, to the email, to him in any capacity. It's certainly very much appreciated as we try to be there for our guy. All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening and for watching, not just today, but all season. I would say in some sort of a emotional goodbye, but we're not stopping.
We're starting.
We're just getting going. It's just the good part of the season. So we're off and running. So thanks everybody for watching and listening. We'll talk to you next time.